Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma, and it's good to be back with you. Last week, I had cataract surgery on my left eye here, and pardon me. First of all, I want to thank everyone for your wonderful comments, for your prayers, concern, and what have you. The operation went just fine. The doctor said that my lens, my cornea, all of those type of things look really, really good after the surgery. Now, I have to be really honest with you. At times, my eyesight is better. It's clearer in the left eye. And at other times, there have been a couple of days after the surgery that, for instance, I woke up one morning and everything was just, it was like a fog, and I'm going, So I don't know what the time frame is supposed to be for this radical improvement of eyesight. Now, I can tell you that my far off sight, my far vision, does seem to be improved. My up close vision, sort of, kind of, maybe. And so I don't really know what that means. I'm supposed to go back next week for a checkup to see where we're at. Again, the doctor seemed to be pleased with the post-op exam, so I'm assuming that's good news. Now, one of my problems is that the other eye, my right eye, it's going to have surgery too. So it may very well be, and the doctor even mentioned this, it may very well be that I will not get the radically improved overall sight, improved sight, until after I get my right eye done, which is more money, unfortunately. So anyway, that's kind of an update on where I'm at. I took the week off, and I don't know if this is normal or not, but I sort of kind of think that I had a little bit of a reaction to the sedation that they gave me. Of course, it was, they didn't knock me completely out. Conscious sedation. And that was fascinating. I mean, it really was. But nonetheless, all I've wanted to do is sleep. I mean, just one day after the surgery, I slept for 16 hours. I mean, I just couldn't climb out of it. So I've got to ask him about that when I go back and see kind of what's going on there. So again, that's the report. So, well, I took the week off to let my voice rest, and it's still not healed, but I do feel good. All right. I feel really good. And once again, let me say thank you so much to all of you for your prayers and expressions of concern, for all of those who gave the encouraging posts that said, boy, you're going to love this. You're going to have fantastic eyesight. Okay. We'll wait and see. And I look forward to that. All right. Back to the Olivet Discourse and our summary of what we have seen in our study. Now, we had quite an extensive exegetical examination of the Olivet Discourse. So now I'm going back and I'm hitting some of the highlights. I'm adding a little bit of new information, but a whole lot of what I'm sharing with you is just reiteration of what we have seen and driving the point home. All right. One of the key passages considered to be so by most exegetes, most Bible commentaries, is verse 35. Now remember, the underlying premise of the futurist view is Jesus predicted the fall of Jerusalem. The apostles mistakenly and confusedly linked that event with the end of the Christian age, the end of time and space continuum. So supposedly now, what we have in Matthew chapter 24 is that in verses 4 to 34, Jesus is talking about AD 70, the impending fall of Jerusalem. Now, verse 34, let's look at this a little closer. Jesus said, "Verily I say unto you, this generation will by no means pass away until all of these things are fulfilled." Now, folks, in the history of interpretation, it is absolutely stunning to witness the attempts of the commentators to escape the force of Matthew chapter 24, verse 34. So, what do we have? Well, down through the years, commentators, most of them premillennialists, have said, well, this generation, from the Greek word genea, means this race of people. That goes back into the patristics, by the way. So we are told that what Jesus was saying is this race of people, i.e. the Jews, will not pass away until the coming of the Lord, the judgment and the resurrection. Well, it's somewhat understandable, I suppose, if a person is not aware of how the word genea is related to genos, and how through time, how through time the meaning of genea began to be refined. Now, make no mistake, genos means family, it means stock, it means race. That's not genea. Genea originally, way back, meant stock, family. Well, that was before the first century. That was prior to that. By the time of the first century, and a century or so perhaps, before that, genea meant a temporal statement. It is not used of this race of people. There may be a few isolated places here and there outside the Bible, but it's absolutely inappropriate to go to Matthew chapter 24 and verse 34 and say, well, Jesus was promising, now watch this, this generation will not pass until all of these things are fulfilled. This generation means this race of people, i.e. the Jews. Therefore, the Jewish race will cease to exist at the coming of the Lord. Well, that kind of messes up the dispensational and premillennial view, because the premillennialists believe, Christ comes and initiates the millennium, which is all about Israel. So if you argue that in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 34, Jesus was saying, this race of people will not pass away until these things are fulfilled, and these things include the coming of the Lord on the clouds of heaven and with power and great glory, then that means that the Jewish race ceases to exist at the second coming of Christ. Others have said, well, it's not specifically the Jewish race, it's this kind of people. What kind of people? There is no definition of this kind of people in that text. And remember, Jesus is speaking to Jews. When we look at the term, this generation, genea is used something like 26 times in the New Testament. By the way, Gary DeMar wrote a fantastic article on the meaning of this generation. It's now posted on my website. Just go to donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com, and in the search bar, just look up Gary DeMar, this generation, or this generation. Read the article. But you see, ladies and gentlemen, this generation is a temporal marker. And it refers to all of the people living at a given point of time. And so what some commentators have said, and this is common once again among the dispensationalists, is the generation that is alive. They recognize that Genea is a temporal marker. So they say, well, what Jesus was saying is the generation that will be alive when these signs take place will be the generation to see the coming of the Lord. So once again, they acknowledge that the temporal meaning of this generation, but then they extrapolate it so far 2,000 years away from, divorced from, the very generation to whom Jesus was saying. It should have been, Jesus should have said, that generation, parentheses, the one to see all these things, will not pass until all of these things are fulfilled. He should have used that far demonstrative. Instead, he used the near, this generation. And thus, it's incredible, ladies and gentlemen, the verbal gymnastics that people go to destroy the meaning of this generation. People say, well, we're just now seeing the signs. And so when we take the view, well, the generation that sees these signs, we're overlooking the fact, point number one, Jesus said one of the great signs of the nearness of the end would be this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to the nations. Then comes the end. What end? The end that the apostles had asked about. Not a different end. The apostles had asked about the end of the age linked with the fall of Jerusalem and the temple. Let me ask you once again, what age did the city of Jerusalem and what age did that temple at Jerusalem represent? It wasn't the Christian age. It wasn't time and space per se. So, the generation that would see the signs would be the generation when all of those things, including the coming of the Lord, judgment, resurrection, would be fulfilled. But that generation did see the preaching of the gospel into all the world. Romans 1, 5 and following, Romans 16, 25 and 26. The gospel has been made to all of the nations. Colossians 1, 5 to 7. This gospel has been made known to the nations and is bringing forth fruit in every nation. Colossians 1:23, the gospel has been preached to every creature under heaven. Is that hyperbole? Well, whatever you want to say, point of fact is, it's every creature, just like Jesus said, go ye therefore and preach the gospel to every creature. And so, the point of fact is, they asked for a sign of the end of the age. Jesus gave a sign of the end of the age, and he also talked, of course, about the abomination of desolation, which occurred in the first century. And he said, when you see these things, know that it is near, nigh, even at the door. And then he said, assuredly, I say to you, this generation, the generation to see the signs. Oh, which means the generation that would see the signs and that would flee. Oh, and guess what? The first century church fled from Judea, fled to Pella, because they knew by seeing the signs that the judge was standing right at the door, and Jesus was giving them full assurance. This generation, the generation to see the signs, they saw the signs. This generation will by no means pass until all of these things are fulfilled. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, let me reiterate. You literally have to play verbal gymnastics, verbal games. You cannot find the definitions of this generation that are suggested by some of my futurist friends in order to escape the force of this generation. You can't even find those definitions in the lexicons. Some of these definitions are literally argumentum ad desperatum in order to escape Jesus' words. It's really far past time that people acknowledge that Jesus was predicting that his coming, his parousia, the judgment, and the resurrection, Matthew 24:31, was to happen in the first century. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. This is November the 19th. Here we are. The month is rapidly going by, and I want you to remember the introduction of my brand new book, Resurrection Feast Fulfilled, a study of the relationship between Israel's last feast day, Sukkot, and the resurrection of the dead. Thank you so very much for the wonderful response and reaction to the introduction of this book. It has really, really been accepted, and we appreciate that. For the month of November 2023, U.S. orders only, total delivered price $22.95. That's going to save you well over $10. Go to my website, donkeypreston.com, BibleProphecy.com. There's a beautiful banner right up at the very top. Click on the banner. Order the book. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Don't miss out. Listen, I've already gotten some absolutely fantastic feedback on this book. Order the book. I think you'll be glad you did. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you on the flip side.